Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I am glad that Alice could meet with us during the Across the Miles. For those of you that don't know, Alice is my sister, and she's from Oregon. Tonight, we're going to talk more in depth about cemetery research. And so I'm going to kind of tell you some of my, she doesn't need one. Shouldn't need one. If my friend Sue doesn't make it, I'm going to call her back and walk her through it. But if she clicks on, if she does it through Facebook, she just has to click on the blue letters. I might already see her if she uses the initials SLKD. So if this is Sue Dickerson, and is that you, Sue?
It's me. I'm here.
Good. One of the fun things about being at the temple the last couple of weeks has been that I've had the chance to visit with temple friends. Some that work on my shift and some that don't. And we've caught up a little bit about how we've been doing. And several have told me about what temple work they did during COVID and what family history work they did during COVID. And I thought that Sue's story was worth sharing. So I have asked Sue to share with us. Sue, if you go to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and wiggle your mouse, you will probably see a camera with a line through it.
Yes.
If you, oh, there you are.
Okay.
Now we can see Sue. Sue is actually a distant relative of mine on my grandfather Wilden's side. Her family married into the Wildens as well. Is that the right way to say it?
That's correct. Correct.
So Sue, take a few minutes and tell us about what happened when you got sick this summer or this season.
Well, this actually happened with the relatives who did marry into the Wilden line. Their name was Lily White. That was my mother's maiden name.
Oh.
And the Lily Whites had their own interesting history, but it's a relatively rare name. So many years ago, because my sister's a family history consultant, they gave us permission to do any Lily Whites that we came across. And most all of them have shown to be related somehow. Anyhow, this summer, or a few months ago, I was sick one day, and I asked my husband and one of my sons to please give me a blessing. And my youngest son came over to help, and he said, please bless my mom that she might be able to find more genealogy. And since I was sick, I thought that was a really strange request because I was trying to get well, not do more genealogy. But I was kind of at a standstill with these Lily Whites, and the only place where I had left to do work was a Jewish line, and all the Jewish records were destroyed in London in World War II. They burned up with the Great Synagogue, and so I didn't have any place to go. But after this blessing, a couple of weeks later, I happened to glance up at the shelves right here next to my computer, And there was a file up there. This is it right here, a plastic file folder. And it had a stack of papers in it about like that. And I thought, well, what are those? I've never seen those before. And it turned out they were research done by an uncle of mine, a brother of my mother's, who passed away in the 1960s. And my mother passed away in 1983. And so I know I didn't get it from him. I know I didn't get this file folder from my mom. I have absolutely no idea where it came from. But it was filled with Lily White names that were found in records throughout England, mostly in the London, Hampshire, Sussex area. And I was truly astounded at what I saw. And so I have been working continuously on that. I have probably reserved about 700 ordinances of various sorts on various people, and entered at least a couple of hundred names into Family Search that had not been there previously. And it has been such a blessing. And I will tell you some of the names, like one little story. I found a Kate Lily White. I found her birth record and looked her up and found where she belonged, who her parents were. And I had previously done work for her parents and all of her siblings who had been listed on census records, but she was not, because she died before there was the census. And so yes, here was an extra child that had not previously been in Family Search or anywhere else, because she died when she was just a year old. And I'm so grateful to be able to have these precious people who were lost. And that is my testimony, that there are, even though, and I've heard hundreds of people say this, my work is all done. And I was thinking the same thing. And it is my testimony that our work is not complete, that there are hundreds of people out there waiting and waiting for us to come along and to do the work for them, that without us, they're lost. And I bear this little testimony to you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. And thank you, Sue.
Are you related to the Lily Whites in Brigham City?
Probably.
Yeah, my father served in a state presidency with President Lily White when I was growing up.
Well, when my great-great-grandparents came from England after joining the church, my great-great-grandpa died. And there was my great-grandma with two little children that she wasn't sure what to do with. So she passed them on to other people to take across the plains, not knowing if she would be able to get across the plains. And one was a Benjamin who went north, went to the Brigham City, even Logan area. And the other was the tiny baby, and she eventually rejoined with the tiny baby Joseph, and that's where they enter into the Wilden line with that Joseph. And so we come from the southern part of Utah. But yes, I would guess the other is from Benjamin.
It's amazing how many ties we have between each other.
Yeah.
Sue and I, when she told me the story, we talked very briefly about where did this file come from? Did somebody deliver it to her house when she wasn't there and someone answered the door and put it in on the shelf? Or was this more like the names that were delivered to the Logan Temple, where they came in a newspaper that had been printed only a few days before, far too recent for the newspaper to have traveled across the ocean with any of the methods they had of travel in those days. I think it very likely that the Lord planned all of this so that she could do it now.
Yeah. Because there are records available now, and I'm so grateful to people that do indexing.
Yeah.
Yes. And that kind of reminds me of this other fact, and that is probably on April 1st of 2022 is when indexing will begin, because that's when the federal government will release the 1950 census. And so any of us that are at all willing to index ought to plan on doing a lot of indexing in April and working on that 1850 census. That can be a plan for us. Well, Sue, thank you. You can either join us or you can leave, whichever fits your schedule better tonight.
Oh, I think I'll listen to you for a while.
Okay, I really appreciate you coming and telling us that story. When I was a little girl, something we did often was go to my parents' hometown in Mancos, Colorado. And whenever we went to the cemetery. And we would see my grandmother's grave, my great-grandparents' graves, my great-great-grandparents' graves. And we just knew that that's where all of the family on our family was buried. We always went to the cemetery. When I was in high school, it was probably about the time I was a senior. There was a project that went on through many LDS wards and branches to go to the local cemetery and transcribe headstones and type them up and send them to Salt Lake to the Family History Library, and they would be bound and put on the shelf because cemetery records tell so much about our families, about individual people. And so that was an effort that the church was making to encourage people to collect cemetery records. And I remember that specifically because I'm the one that got the assignment to do all the typing. And so I remember typing up the Midland, Texas cemetery records. Mm. A few years ago, I've told many times in my lessons about Lily Wade and how she was one of my major genealogy or research projects. And so one day when Charles had business meetings, and I went with him and we drove through Warrensburg, Missouri.
Hospital is
so while we were in the Warrensburg area, we looked up the cemetery and we went and talked to the cemetery sexton, and he told us where in the cemetery the gravestone for Lily Wade Michael was. And he said, however, don't be surprised. I think it's one of the ones that was broken off on Halloween when people came rampaging through the cemetery on Halloween. And sure enough, we found the marker laying on the ground. And Charles did his best he could without cement to make another trench for it and to put it up. And I was so excited about finding a stone marking her, and a rather big marker marking her husband. And his even told what military unit he was on in and during the Civil War, and quite a bit about him. Not too far away was his first wife, who died 11 months after he got home from the Civil War. And she was buried more with her parents. But I remember that day, we went to the store and bought tissue paper and crayons and came back and laid the tissue paper against the stone and colored back and forth with the crayons so that I would have a permanent marking, permanent reminder of that day. But I have always had a strong emotional attachment to this great grandmother, because of what she gave to our family in such a short time. She's the grandmother that met my ancestor, married him in March, had her baby the middle of December, and died on New Year's Day. So 10 months was how long she was part of our family. And that was her only son. If it wouldn't have been for that little baby, we wouldn't be here today. So I have always felt that, I've always felt very much a warm spot in my heart for her, very attached to her. And when I have been at her grave, I have really felt like I was at a sacred place, that was a sacred spot. So in the process of things through the years, we visited cemeteries and made notes. And then came technology. There was a man, and I forget his name, but he loved famous graves. He liked seeing where famous people were buried and what kind of tombstones they had. So when computers came along, he made up a website, and he called it Find a Grave, in which he recorded all of the pictures and information he found about famous people's burials. Well, it didn't take very long for genealogists to catch on that this was worth far more than famous people. And so Find a Grave was born. So I'm going to share my screen and show you some things about Find a Grave. So the most recent time that I went to see a cemetery was a couple of weeks ago. I was visiting my son and daughter-in-law in St. George, and my son said, did you ever stop to think that Benny Clark was buried in St. George? And I said, well, yeah, I knew that Benny Clark was buried in St. George. And he said, well, should we go find the cemeteries? And so we went to the St. George Cemetery, and we went to look at the chart that they had, and most seminaries do have a chart like this. And it showed us where the plot was, and here's the plot number and Find a Grave. Anyway, and it was also on a map. So we went and looked, and Benny Clark does not have a marker of any kind on his grave. And that doesn't surprise me greatly. But nonetheless, I couldn't help but think that his life deserves some kind of a recognition with a stone after his life. My husband knew him in about 1946 and had not seen him since. And it still seems that he maybe should have been cared for enough that somebody would have put a stone on his grave. But so, as I'm thinking about this, I looked up in Find a Grave. And so the way that you look in Find a Grave is, in this case, I went to the St. George City Cemetery, and then on the bottom part of this screen, it says search memorials. And so his name was Benny Clark. And for a minute, I just got my attention distracted. Here is Juanita Brooks. Juanita Brooks is, I think, a step grandmother of one of my good friends, Nellie Crow. So to see this famous memorial show right here kind of caught me off guard. Okay, so I searched for Benny Clark. I don't remember what year he was born. I have a record of when he died, but I didn't remember. But I just clicked there, and there enough. There is Benny Clark. This little triangle question mark thing said that there was not a picture, and you can see there is not a picture. And if I click on view source, I can see that it was submitted by Max Turpin. I have no idea who Max Turpin is. Also, there's no information about him at all. I think perhaps that I should put the information that I know about him, but I hadn't done that yet. But that is just a little way in which finding a cemetery and referring to it can happen easily and frequently. But now I'm going to tell you some more things about how to get best information out of Find a Grave. And the first thing is, Find a Grave can be accessed through hints that the computer found that somebody attached, either to a person in Ancestry or to a person in Family Search. But when you access Find a Grave through Ancestry or through Family Search, you just see it from that perspective, and you don't see everything. In order to be able to really do everything with Find a Grave, you need to register. And so to register, you come over to the top corner and you click that you want to make an account. And to make the account, you just fill in your name and your password. It doesn't cost any money, but it gives you some options that you wouldn't have had otherwise. It gives you the option of having people contact you by email. And it also, Charles is asking me a question. What do you want to know? So when you register, they assign you a Find a Grave ID. So this ID number is there. And here is my email that I provided them. And here are 3 other icons now that I have an account. One is sometimes somebody takes a picture and they don't get around to transcribing it. This is how I could transcribe it now that I'm registered with Find a Grave. Sometimes there will be somebody that wants a picture taken. And I've said that I'll be glad to go to a cemetery within 5 miles of my house and take a picture. Since I first started doing Find a Grave, which was probably in about 2008, the amount of graves that are on Find a Grave has just exploded. And so there are not nearly as many photo requests as there used to be. I used to mostly just take pictures in the Springville Cemetery because there were lots of people in Provo willing to take pictures, but not too many that were willing to go that far to Springville. But here is edits. Now an edit part is important. And so let me see if I can pull up. No, I didn't succeed in pulling up the one that I'd left open. No, I didn't leave it open. But any grave, any time that you're the first person that puts somebody in Find a Grave, then you are the one that created the memorial. Then if somebody notices that something is missing or could be improved, then they can request that you make an edit. Or if you put it in anytime you want, you can make an edit. So if I put in my grandmother and I find another picture of my grandmother, I can definitely add it. So here under this pencil, which is kind of a symbol for editing, it shows that there are some edits that people have asked me to make. Now, because I made some of those today, it won't say 20 anymore, it'll only say 6. But here are Penelope Cartwright went to the Fountain Green Cemetery, and she wrote down where our different family members are buried that I had started the memorials for. And so she's saying, Nancy, would you please add the grave number, the plot number, so that anybody that looks at Find a Grave can find it. And so I'm saying, yes, I will be glad to accept that suggestion that you're making. So when I accept those, then I can click on that and accept them. And now those edits will be approved. If I had discovered that I wanted to add this plot number, then I wouldn't need to ask somebody else. I'd be able to do it myself. If someone from any place else wants to change something to the ones that I have put on, they can't do it without my help. So these are the other ways that you can contribute to Find a Grave if you have joined it. You can add a memorial, you can take pictures for somebody else, you can add things that somebody else would like added, or you can upload photos, transcribe pictures that somebody else took. And I'm not even sure about what the spreadsheets would be. But those are some things that you can do to Find a Grave if you are a member. If you're not a member, then what you're mostly going to do here is come down and search for memorial or search for cemetery. Now, I don't think that Find a Grave has a very good search engine. So sometimes I have to look a little bit harder than I wanted to look. But let's just look at the cemetery. My husband's pointing me out that here's a map of Utah County. I'm going to look for Cedar Grove Cemetery in Mancos, Colorado, because that's where 6 generations of my family is buried. So I'm going to browse. Browse might take a little bit longer, but it's a good way to do it. United States of America, Colorado, Montezuma County. Oh, I passed it. Okay, now and in Mancos. So now it is going to tell me that these are the cemeteries that are available in Mancos, Colorado. Now, because I've searched Mancos often, I've got it listed over here at the side as well. So here's a picture of the Cedar Grove Cemetery. Now, when I first started adding things to the cemetery, to the Cedar Grove Cemetery, it was like 5% had photos and memorials. Now, 99% of the markers in the Cedar Grove Cemetery have been photographed. So I can do a search for the memorials in Cedar Grove Cemetery, and I can search for Wilden. And if I search for Wilden, then I will get a list of all of the Wildens that are buried in the Cedar Grove Cemetery. There are 34 of them. Now, I probably would not have guessed that I had that many relatives in the cemetery, but as I go through the list, it doesn't surprise me at all because I know a lot of them. This is my grandma. So here in her memorial is a picture of her gravestone and a picture of her and another picture of her. And if I'm telling stories, I'll tell you how my mother bought two things just before her wedding. She bought a dress for her mother-in-law, her stepmother, to wear to the wedding, and she bought the stone for her mother's grave. I also have a penny postcard that my grandmother wrote to my grandfather before they were married. And at that time, it was becoming the fad in Mangus, Colorado, to have a postcard made with your picture on it. And you gave the postcard to your friends. And so in one postcard that she sent to my grandpa, she said, I am going to have my picture taken for my postcard. And we don't have a copy of that postcard, but I do believe that this is a picture that she had taken for that postcard. You might notice that these pictures were added by Crystal Kornbacher. Now, Crystal Kornbacher, I have never met. Somehow she got a copy of a lot of my family pictures, and she has posted them lots of places. The advantage of that is that now pictures that my mother had collected and that I had copies of have been shared with a lot of people. The downside is that I have pictures that belong to me that I've never given permission to somebody else to post, and they have been posted. So one of the things that is suggested by Find a Grave, and I just read this or heard about this last week, is that and if you join and you're making your bio over here, that you write down on it that any pictures posted by me may be shared. Now, if I had done that, then I wouldn't mind that Crystal posted my pictures. And actually, I'm glad that my pictures are posted. I just kind of, sometimes think that I should have been the one that did it, but I didn't.
Who is she?
A very distant relative, and I don't know how, Alice. But she has posted my pictures in lots of places. So we have visited the same sites, and she saw the benefit of having the pictures added. So, and I did not even have this picture until a few years ago. So she has added them somewhat recently. Now, an advantage of using Find a Grave is that you can add flowers. Now, in this case, I see that I haven't added flowers. Since I saw this referred to this week, I'm gonna add more. When you add a flower, it shows you a bunch of flowers. You can choose them, and you just, well, it didn't show me the pictures, the flowers, but it will. If you're saying that you want to add one, it will give you the chance to choose a picture of a bouquet and write a little tribute and post it. Now, the advantage of that is that then, for example, if Crystal Hornbacher had left flowers, then I could send her a message on Find a Grave, and I would be able to say, I forgot how we're related, and how did you get all of my pictures? So that would be an advantage of taking time to leave a flower. Now, Find a Grave gives us an opportunity to do a bio where you just tell a little bit about someone, about the person. And so I just wrote here like 2 sentences. That's going to give somebody a little bit of an introduction to my mother. It's going to list here because either I or somebody else made the connections. It lists that her parents are Walter Sherman and Lydia Lottie, that her husband was Mark Wilden, that these are her siblings, and that these are her children. So because of this Find a Grave that has been filled out well, I could even make up a whole family group sheet, just judging from this family. And I do have an example of that. Lily Wade's uncle was John Van Dyke. And here is a memorial that somebody made for John Van Dyke. And this is in the Toledo, Illinois Cemetery. The name of the cemetery is Toledo Memorial Park, and it's a rather big cemetery. The story that I have about this stone is we were driving through town. I said, let's stop and look see if I can find any Van Dykes in the cemetery. We stopped, and I knew that John Van Dyke had been buried there, and I had even printed out from Find a Grave a picture of his stone. So it's a rather large cemetery. There's something like 6,000 graves. How in the world can you find one stone in 6,000 graves? Well, sometimes the Lord blesses you. As we were sitting there we drove up and down some of the roads in the cemetery, kind of trying to hope that we would see this stone, and we didn't. But up drive the cemetery workers that mow the lawn. And so we stopped them and we asked them and said, we're looking to find out if there's any Van Dykes buried here besides John. And they said, oh, you have to go into the town and the office is closed today. But tell me about John. And I said, well, here's a picture of his cemetery stone. And they said, oh, we know where that one is. It's right over there. 5,000 stones. And they knew where John Van Dyke was buried. And there were no other Van Dykes near him, but we did look. But it's surprising to me how often those little coincidences happen. So here's the story about John Van Dyke. It tells about how his family came to work building the National Road, which President Thomas Jefferson, under his tutelage, was signed into law, and they built a road from Washington, D.C. west into Ohio, into Illinois. And so here's the story about him, with a very interesting story about how he and a bunch of friends decided to go to the gold rush, and nearly all of them died. But he was one of the few that made it back. And so here is a connection to his wife's memorial as well as his children. Now, if you look how many children he's got, and see here are two people that did leave flowers. But look at all of those children. And based on the bio, which told how many children they had, and this list of children, and then I could click on each of these children and learn more about those children. I can put together not just a family group sheet, but can gain quite a bit of an understanding about the family and what they were doing in Toledo, Illinois. And actually, I was able to do temple work for a lot of the children in this family based on what I learned just here from Find a Grave. So that is how you find a memorial if you're looking through, we searched from a cemetery. You can also look for the memorial itself. Like I said, they do not have a very good search engine, but let's just do one that I'm thinking of quickly. Yes, did somebody say something?
Before you leave, this leaving a flower, is there a charge for it, or is it just an?
No charge, just a way to help people connect.
Thank you.
So let's just look under searching using the template. And I didn't put in very much information. I just mostly put in her name and her death date. And there is that marker. So Find a Grave, I think, is one of the things that I would search for nearly, not quite as early as the census. The census would be kind of our first thing to look at, and then vital records, but I would certainly look at cemetery records early. So that's the introduction to Find a Grave. Now, another group Find a Grave, meanwhile, has been bought by Ancestry, and now it's owned by Ancestry instead of independently. Another group, and I thought it was the church originally, but I'm not so sure about that anymore, and I can't tell you for sure who does. But this next website is called Billion Graves, and it is quite similar to Find a Grave. And you can again search through either through cemeteries or through names. And so here are all the Wildens again that are buried in the Cedar Grove Cemetery. It's very similar in information. At one point, it looked like Billion Graves was going to have more stones in it, more memorials than Find a Grave, but after Find a Grave was taken over by Ancestry, that no longer became the case. But I think it's worth looking at both. Then there is one more, and I thought I had a marker on it, and I didn't apparently save it. It's called Names in Stone. And Names in Stone is also cemetery records. It has one advantage that the others don't have, and that is that it tended to go to the records from the cemetery instead of from the markers. So there are people in Names in Stone that do not have a marker, that nobody has ever, like a historical society or something, has never gone through and made a marker for them. But they still are found in Names in Stone. And it's listed kind of by names. By maps. So if you don't find someone, I would suggest that you look in Names in Stone, particularly if you think that you know what cemetery they're in and you don't find a listing. Here I just did a last name search for the name of Guyman, and I came out with 68 matches, many different cemeteries. So it would be a way to search. Does anybody have one that they would like? So I've talked to you now about those 3 sites. Does anybody have a site that a person that they would like me to look up and Find a Grave, just so that we're looking at somebody besides just mine?
Unmute, there you go.
Oh, Nancy,
Yes.
Rick has a grandmother, and we have down that she was buried in Illinois. And when we went there, we couldn't find her stone. And I can tell you her name. It was called, it was in a place called Hamilton, Illinois. Okay.
Okay, let's go to Illinois.
Okay.
Hamilton. Now, of course, not everybody has a stone, and sometimes that's because they are expensive.
I'm not sure if it was Hamilton County, though. I mean, the name of the town was Hamilton. It's kind of like across the river from Keokuk. Let's see.
Oh, so it's kind of across from Nauvoo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not very far. Yeah,
It's south of Nauvoo.
it's
Yeah.
south of Nauvoo. Yeah, let me.
And Nauvoo is in.
I
what
just
county is
Googled
Nauvoo
it.
in?
I just Googled Hamilton and it's in Hancock County.
Okay,
Hancock?
that
That sounds right.
sounds very familiar.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. There are this many cemeteries nearby.
Okay, I think it was called White Cemetery.
It would have been-
It's pretty close to the river.
Oh, but it would have been up in here, I think.
White spelled that way?
White, yeah, I think it's.
It might be that one.
Yeah, I thought and there's a little church there. Oh, I was wrong.
Okay.
Or maybe it had an oak.
White
That
family
oak name, that could have been it too. There was one.
So my husband's wondering if it's white oak.
Cemetery.
Yeah, that could be it. I thought there was something like that there.
Going back to the map.
And I have lost Illinois.
Oh, okay. Hamilton.
So Hamilton,
Mhm.
Hancock, Illinois, Hancock County.
now see, this is why I don't like the Find a Grave search engine. It's telling us that there's no matching location to Hamilton, Hancock, Illinois.
I think you spelled Illinois, just go back and do Illinois. I
that's
think
right.
it's a lowercase
I
I.
think Find a Grave wants you to type the word county. That's what I've always noticed.
Oh, there it is,
Oh,
right there. Yeah.
okay, okay.
No
Well,
cemetery.
it's still not named quite
Okay.
right.
It may not like the place, the city, maybe just type in, because it could be outside of Hamilton. So just type Hancock County.
If they go back to that map.
And what she's suggesting we do is the kinds of things that you think about when you're doing an internet search.
Well, the map, the map, it looks like it could be that green one there.
That green one.
Well, there's a lot of them. The green one that just up from number 8 in red. No, over to the, okay.
That 8 was telling us that there were 8 cemeteries underneath that marker.
Well,
They're probably.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try memorial since we're not finding the cemetery easily. Okay, so what is your grandmother's name?
Alice.
Alice?
Alice.
Melvina.
Melvina.
Melvina, Melvina.
Now, I don't know if you
Yep.
noticed that that was my baby's name.
I didn't know that.
That's an
Yes.
unusual name, okay?
Okay. And Blaine, Blaine, was her married name that when she died, that was her name.
Okay, so very likely her name is going to be Blaine
Okay.
in Find a Grave. Do you happen to know when or where she was?
I think she died in 1929.
And do you think she died in Illinois, or that the cemetery's in Illinois?
Yeah, that's what we saw, like a little obituary, and it said that she was buried there over
Okay.
on that side.
So now we could put maiden name and also put in her maiden name,
Okay,
but it might or might not have that in Find a Grave. So let's go ahead
Davis.
and see this first.
Davis, yeah.
I thought that was.
No match with that. So let's refine the search. And now something that we can certainly do is we can go to Family Search and get exact dates. We could also get a sibling or a parent name to add to it. So to do that, we would go to Find a Grave, to the tree. You would be able to find it real fast on your end, but I can go to Find on my end, and I can type in Alice
On the
and female.
on a headstone, they're gonna have the maiden name.
On a headstone, we probably will have her married name. We might have both. What
No,
was,
my wife,
what is her maiden name?
Davis.
Family Tree, Family Search is going to have her maiden name. Maybe that's what,
well, my wife's maiden name is on the gravestone. Every other people in the cemetery is the same.
had their maiden names.
Yes,
Good,
at least in Brigham.
good. That's not universal. Did I remember Blaine correctly?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, so now, because we always have a piece of paper when we're doing family history,
that's it,
we
right?
can write down that she was born in 1883 and that she died in 1929 and that she's buried in Illinois, but died in Missouri.
Yes, right across the river. And, I kind of wondered if maybe her parents were buried in Illinois, because they did live in Illinois.
Well, and you could certainly take a little bit more time and check up that wondering.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to Find a Grave, and now we'll put in, let's see if I can remember it, Alice Blaine.
No, David.
Maiden name was,
Davis.
okay, where is that?
Up at the top.
We'll put it here. Year died, we already put in that, I think, 1929, born in 1883. And search. And again, we did not find it. Charles is suggesting we take out that Davis, but I think we had already looked there. Now, I think it's very likely that she's there, but I think it's going to take us a little bit more searching.
Nancy, yeah, we can do some other time, but we found a place where there was an open, it was unmarked grave, and we had a feeling that maybe that was her grave. So it probably might not be on Find a Grave because there's no marker.
That is a possibility.
So it'd be that other thing you told us about that have the records, but no markers.
Well, and so what do you do in that kind of a case? You get a hold of the cemetery itself. The person in the cemetery who is in charge of keeping track of that is the sexton. And the sexton will probably have in his records whether or not Alice is buried there.
Okay.
So you're going to have to contact the different cemeteries that are in Hancock County, and you'll probably start by looking at that map more closely and choose which cemeteries to write to first.
Okay.
It is definitely possible for people to not have a stone and therefore not have a memorial made. Or
Yeah.
maybe that particular cemetery, maybe they only have 50% of the cemetery made with memorials made.
Is there, a
Allison?
difference, is there a difference between memorials and markers?
Memorials is the listing in Find a Grave about the marker or memorial. But the Find a Grave word memorial means that somebody has put them in to find a grave.
Okay.
Just mute it again. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it would have been more fun if we would have found it quickly. Let's maybe keep looking and see if we can find it. But I think now it's time for the closing prayer. Sister Chestnut, would you please say our closing prayer? Well, first of all, does anybody else have other questions? I guess I should ask that first. And I've lost my stuff. No, I haven't. But I did shrink it somehow or another.
Already.
I still am not quite the master of Find a Grave. I mean of Zoom. Did anybody else have any questions or comments you wanted to make? Okay, then Sister Chestnut, would you please say our closing prayer?
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful for such a beautiful Sabbath day, and we're thankful for all the good things that we were able to learn tonight and also yesterday. We're very thankful for our staff here who does such a good job to help us, and pray that you'll please bless all our efforts, Father in heaven, we pray. And we ask that thou please be with us all this week, with all those who are in need of thy help. And this we say in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
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 Well, that certainly reminded me that we should make the announcement that I think it's the 16th of September. We will be having 2 of our Saturday bonfire classes. One will be for Native American researchers, families, and the other one will be for Spanish-speaking people from Spanish-speaking countries. Maybe even should say South American countries.
September? You
Do I have the right date on that, Diane?
In October.
Oh, October. Okay,
October 16th.
October 16th. And we're going to have it in 2 different rooms so that we can do both Native American and Latin America at the same time. Helen Billeen is going to be our teacher for the Native American. Is that right, Helen?
Yes, she is.
Yes, along with 2 friends.
Oh, good. Good.
If
And
you stop sharing your screen, we can see each other again.
then I will stop showing my screen. That's my problem.
There
Okay.
we go.
Okay, there we go. And then some ladies from the Family History Library in Salt Lake.
No,
One.
Debbie Gertler, she came before. It'll all be in Spanish. So she's teaching it in Spanish.
So that will be great for anybody that you know that speaks Spanish.
So if we don't have Spanish ancestry, then this might not be.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of specialized.
Both, I wanted to tell both you and Angel. I know Angel was interested in coming to a class, if I was to teach about descendant research, and I know John would be too.
Yes.
But I thought today I spent a couple hours with a brother in our ward, and it really kind of works individualized. So I need to make an appointment maybe with each of you and come to your house or have you come here, and we each have our computers side by side. And I just walked him through it, and it seemed to work really well that way. Just because he got the hang of it, And so if you would like to do it one-on-one rather than doing a class, let me know and email me so we can make an appointment. I do best on Sundays. And we could kind of do it that way, because I think you're the only 3 that have mentioned that you're interested in that.
Anyone who wants Diane's help one-on-one on descendancy research should take it. Now, what is descendancy research? Descendancy research is checking one ancestor at a time and making sure that all of their descendants have all of their temple work done, and that the research is done for that particular ancestor.
My theme is no empty chairs. I'm looking for the people who got missed, because there's usually a spouse that got missed, there's a child that got missed, or somebody that got missed. So that's what it's about.
And Diane is really good at that.
Now, Diane says descendants. Can we take that person that's missed and just follow their lines out to the end once we found them?
What did you say?
Like those guys in Australia that you found for me. I'm finding additional families that they married into that I'm not directly connected to, but can I keep on going with their research?
Well, you can add it into Family Search, but they really recommend that you don't submit them for temple work. But if you put them in Family Search, if somebody's related to them, they're going to be thrilled and they're going to submit them. Otherwise, nobody would ever find them if you didn't.
Yeah, okay.
For
If
example,
you have that information, please share it.
with a lot of our clients, we're going to start asking them if we can put their stuff into Family Search, because for one thing, it generates hints. When you're doing research, you put it into Family Search and you may get some hints that you wanted to have. And so, but having it in Family Search, that way, if a member comes along and is related to them, they're going to be so happy that it's there.
Also remember to follow that relative. Put that little, it used to be called watch, now it's called follow, where you turn that little star at the top of the page black, so that if anybody else makes changes to that person's page, you get an email letting you know.
Or if the spirit just tells you to go ahead and do it.
Nobody's arguing, John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I got a text from Heather at the time. What was
It
it?
doesn't matter, Diane. We don't want you to argue with John.
Oh, what did he say? What did John say?
Unless the spirit tells you to do it anyway.
Oh. Well, you know, I've always said that. I've always qualified it by saying that, but I didn't say it today because I'm trying to live the church rules and be good.
If someone is young enough that they have living relatives, you would not do the temple work without permission from the living relative.
This is way back a long time.
Yeah. The church also, you know, has made an exception to the do your own ancestors' works for people in some communities where everybody in that community is related.
Mhm.
So example, farms in Norway and everybody that lived on that farm were relatives, then you can do the work for everybody on that farm, even though you don't know exactly what your relationship is to each person on that farm.
We have had work by Nancy's kids that we know that our cousin doesn't want. So we have had to tell the kids not to do it.
So my grandchildren who have taken family history classes at BYU, Idaho, or BYU, and so they get all excited. Oh, Uncle Clarence's work's not done yet. Let's do Uncle Clarence's work. No, we really shouldn't do Uncle Clarence's work without permission from Uncle Clarence's kids, and they're still alive. Well, why didn't you get information? Because I'm a coward. Or why didn't you get permission? Because I'm a coward. But we should follow that rule. And it even asks you when somebody is that young, it asks you on the requesting name page, do you have permission? And who gave you that permission?
So does it matter if one cousin out of 3 agrees?
That's enough.
That's enough. Okay.
Unless you really feel like you would be burning a bridge, and then maybe you'd wait a while.
Okay.
When my dad was alive, one of the people that can give permission is a sibling. So my dad gave permission for everybody that we asked him for when he was still alive, but we did never ask him for his brother Clarence. So his brother Clarence still doesn't have his temple work done. It's always good to see your faces.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was good yesterday to have our class. Some of you missed that in our class yesterday, we had, a week ago, we had 15 people that had answered and said, I'm coming. Later in the week, it rose to 20, but we had 30 come.
Wow.
So
Thank you
that
guys
was,
for coming.
that was a very good class. I was very pleased to see the variety of people that came.
Nancy, could you and John hang on just for a few minutes afterward?
Okay.
And so the next class for non-Spanish or Native American will be in November.